Alright, in this video we're going to look at the how are you questions, answers, and then we're going to start putting together our first conversation. So we have three different ways to ask the question. The most common is the informal version, which is ça va, ça va. Note that you have an accent at the bottom of the C. This is an accent called a cedilla. The job of the cedilla is to make sure that that C sounds like an S. Without a cedilla in front of the letter A C would make a K sound. We don't want to say cava. That's not a phrase in French. We want to say ça va. So we have to have our cedilla there. Ça va. Our next how are you question is what I'm going to go ahead and call middle formal. I consider it informal. Your book considers it formal. There's a lot of argument for where and when it can be used. This is something that you can definitely use with people with whom you need to be formal, but maybe not like the very most formal. So if you're talking to like President Obama or the Queen of England, this would be too informal for that. But you would be perfectly fine using this form of how are you with like your teachers or Mr. Pretz or someone like that. So all we're going to do is we're going to add a word to the beginning of our informal. Comment ça va? Note that comment has a nasal sound at the end of it. On. Comment. We don't hear it quite as much when we say the entire sentence together. Comment ça va? I just kind of hit it really quickly and move on. Comment ça va? But it is important, and you definitely don't want to mix it up with the Spanish. Finally, we have our formal form of the question. This is the super formal form, which you could use with anyone up to and including the Queen of England. Comment allez-vous? We've dropped the ça va completely, though we kept the comment. Okay? And don't forget about that nasal still. Comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? Even with the liaison there, because comment ends in a T and aller begins with an A, we still have to hit the nasal. Comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? All right, now we have to think about our replies. We have a large number of replies, and of course this doesn't cover every single possibility ever. But it's a really good list to get you started and talk about a wide range of different emotions. So we're going to start with saying that you're fine or you're okay. Your book translates it as fine. I tend to say okay. They're pretty equivalent translations, so I don't particularly care which one you use. But everybody always likes this reply because it's the same as the original question. Ça va. It's both the question and the answer. Be careful that you differentiate between the question and the answer by the pitch of your voice. When we ask a question, we have to make sure that our voice goes up at the end. Ça va? We do the exact same thing in English. How are you? Ça va? When we reply, we want to make sure that it's a statement, so our voice stays even, or can even go down. I'm okay. Ça va. If you want to say that you are very good, our phrase in French is going to be très bien. Très bien. It sounds a lot like the English word tray, but with the Frenchy R in there. Très. Of course, we don't want to pronounce our S, as you should hopefully be getting used to. And just like the English looks like, you don't actually have to have the très. Okay? It just means the very part. So it would be perfectly alright to reply to ça va. You could say bien. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have the très. It just makes the bien a little bit stronger. If you want to say that you're not bad, pas mal. Very common answer. Pas mal. We still don't pronounce our S, but we do pronounce the L. There are 4 letters that we will always pronounce at the end of French words. Those are C, R, F, and L. That means that we can put together all of these different words to form another reply. So if we have very good was très bien, and not bad was pas mal. If we want to say that you're not too good, you're having a bad day, it's not too good, we're going to say pas très bien. Pas très bien. Another way to say okay, and a very common one at that, is to say comme ci, comme ça. Note that that extra sa still has the cedilla on it. You have to have that to make that S sound if the C is followed by an A. It's not on the C, however, on the CI part, because C followed by an I already makes an S sound. We don't need to cedilla it in order to make it extra S-y. Okay, we can just leave it alone. Comme si, comme ça. It's almost always accompanied by one of these sideways hand waves. Comme si, comme ça. I'm okay. Finally, we have the reply so-so. This is one that appears in your book. It could show up on the common final, but it's not one that I'm going to require you to really know or use because it's not one that I hear. But the phrase is plus ou moins. Plus ou moins. There's that OI combination we've talked about so many times already. That's how you get that wa sound in the middle of moins. Moins. 2 S's we don't pronounce, which means the end of plus sounds exactly like that oo in the middle. Plus ou moins. Moins. It's like a combination of an OI and a nasal sound. Moins. We want to be super polite, so of course, leaving the conversation here is not enough. We want to include the other person again by asking, and you? Just like in English, if someone asks, oh, how are you? You might say, oh, I'm good. You? We want to do the exact same thing in French. Since we have formal and informal use, we're going to have 2 different ways to say this phrase, an informal and a formal. Both of them are going to start with the word and, which is simple, a. Yes, everybody always looks at this and wants to pronounce it et, but et always makes an a sound, and it's actually a very common ending for words. So even though it's the word and in and of itself, which is also a very common word, you'll often see it at the end of words, like in the word ballet. It's a French word that we use in English. We end in a, not an et. Ballet. So if we look at the informal version, we have a toi. A toi. It's a question, so make sure that voice goes up at the end. A toi. There's another OI. Toi. The formal version, et vous. Et vous. So let's put this together into our very first fully French conversation. Okay? So here are you, walking down the hallway at Hawker Grove, having an awesome day, and then all of a sudden, wham! Madame Fleer shows up around the corner. And you really decide that you want to impress me today. So you think, oh, I'm going to have a super awesome conversation with Madame Fleer en français, in French. So, what should you say to get started? The most appropriate greeting here would be bonjour. You can't use salut or coucou because you have to be formal with your teachers. And if we're at school, it's probably not late enough in the evening for you to use bonsoir. So really, bonjour should have been your best answer. So you come up to me, you say bonjour, and I say, oh, that's super awesome. So I say, salut. You want to continue this conversation to prove that my initial assessment of you being awesome is right. So what do you have to say? Exactly, we need a how are you. Probably the best choice here is comment ça va? Comment ça va? It's too formal of a situation on your end to be able to use the plain ça va, but it's not really so formal that comment allez-vous is a requirement. You could use it here if you really wanted to, but comment ça va fits it a little bit better. So you ask me, comment ça va? So I think about it for a second and I reply, bien, merci. Et toi? How will you answer that? There's a lot of ways you could answer that. I just picked one randomly. Comme ci, comme ça. Anything from ça va, très bien, pas mal, pas très bien, comme ci, comme ça, plus ou moins. Any of those would have worked. And now we're almost out of vocabulary, so we're going to go ahead and say goodbye. A bientôt. What's something that I could reply to you? Pretty much any farewell would work here too, but because I really like using à demain for school situations where I see you every single day, that's the one I'm probably going to pick. À demain. Yay! We just put together our very first fully French conversation. From bonjour, comment ça va, comme ci comme ça, à bientôt. All the way from your hellos, your how are yous, I'm okay, see you soon.